Good morning, everyone. How are we all today?
Good morning. Well, that got me going. That's like the music there. I like that big slamming of the hereticals thing coming in on me. It does that big drop, you know. So, how is everyone this morning? And good morning to you, early birds there, Pickle and Shay. That was nice of you to come over. I hope you have some coffee. Keep yourselves awake.
Yeah, and I just remembered I wanted to do this because I remembered I could.
What are we doing? Hmm? Oh, ye. Hmm? Oh, you're grumpy. Crabby is grumpy and crabby, as always. That's what.
There we go.
Mm. Oh, okay. Look at
wanted
you,
wanted to
fancy.
wanted to throw out
See?
the viewer discretion banner.
Hi there. I
I,
would like to. I wonder if I should run one of those for mayhem. This is funny. I never thought of that. I don't know.
so sorry about that, everyone. Just all of a sudden, it was
You,
like, hey, you can put a banner on the bottom because Chris isn't here to put in the comments.
you
So,
don't. You don't
um,
let them kid. Hmm. So this is a tough one today, eh?
yeah,
This is,
today's gonna be
mm-hmm,
rough for some people. Like I said, we for the last 5 weeks we've been telling you this one was coming. This is
mm-hmm,
gonna be covering some topics that are not gonna sit well with some people. So I said viewer discretion is advised. If you don't want to hear about it, you don't want to talk about it, I understand that. We get
mm-hmm.
that 100%. This is not a topic. We will be covering um, sex, torture, child porn,
Brandon.
and a possible murder,
Mm.
as well as um, what happened as a
Manipulation.
result.
Mm.
Yeah.
Torture. Mm.
So, as a
Mm.
result of this, Claire does have the legal part of it. I've got the nasty part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, today's topic is kind of going to be a little rough. Um, just be warned. Like I said, if you guys do not want to join us for this stream, we understand it 100%.
Mm.
This is week 6. Next week is week 7. We will be bringing the whole thing together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it will next week will be a complete go over of the things we've talked to over the last 6 weeks, and then Claire's going to hit us with all the cool legal. This is what everybody got. This is what they found.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what she's really good at, and I'm not so much. So
Yeah, good. I'm definitely fascinated with it. Yeah,
yeah,
I do enjoy that
so
very much. But thank you for the compliment.
there is
Yeah.
a silver lining to this story. So
Today, yes, or at the end.
at the end, next
Mm-hmm.
week will be the silver lining.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets their comeuppance. So
Mm. This is true.
next week, like I said, is the conclusion. The week after for her for Cults and Conspiracies, we'll be covering was Did Paul McCartney actually die and been replaced?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we're looking at that one, and the following week after that, we will start our me and Chris will start our discussion on the Raelians. If you might have noticed, there is Chris went through and hit a whole bunch of
Yeah, that's
put
how
up,
we do it,
yeah.
Godless. That's how we do it. Yeah.
Just the Scummer hit
Mm-hmm.
us with his member monthly super chat, which I don't know why it doesn't pop up on um StreamYards for this, but he does says a nice light-hearted story to lead into Christmas. So yeah.
Mm.
Excuse me. So um let's see some new faces over today. We've got Shay and Suck at the Pickle and Bearded
Yes.
Heretic. Hello, how are you guys? And as always, we got the Krabby Hermit, my stalker Raven. Love that woman. Woolly's here. So we got a decent crowd today. Like I said, I'm not
Yeah.
expecting a lot of people to be in because this is a
Mm-hmm.
really tough subject today.
Yeah. Shay
Um,
follows us on our other series
yeah,
and on
she
your
does. She
series
follows
too.
us
Yep.
over on your channel, and
And Pickle too. They like the true crime. They like this
mm-hmm.
crime stuff. So yeah, cool. That's good. They.
Raven's like, you shush stalker.
Oh, I know, right?
uh, so One more thing I want to get out, and then we're going to jump into this.
Mm-hmm.
Six Pack will be returning on the 7th of next month.
Ooh.
And then I believe it's the 14th is our 100th episode of
Yeah.
Six Pack.
We
And
do the
that will be,
awards.
that will be the Fundy Awards. We'll be covering
Yeah.
those with a possible
I'm
special guest. So be on the lookout for that one.
a special guest.
Yeah,
This is
a
exciting.
couple special
I
guests.
Yeah,
Multiple
I
special
see a
guests.
lot of you, but I miss everybody. I miss you guys. It was like and don't tell 8. I'm kind of
Oh, yeah.
missing. Let it be
Don't
our
tell they.
secret, everybody. Don't tell 8. I kind of miss him. Yeah.
For my channel over on True Serial, there was no show this week due to holiday stuff. Next week, Claire and I will return on Thursday night to finish covering the FBI document on serial murder, and then the following week I will be hosting my first serial killer roundtable. Spots are limited, so if you guys want in on that, let me know early. Because we don't want like 15 people in the round table, so I'm gonna try to keep that
It's
down
gonna be
to
fun. I'm so excited about that. That's cool.
yeah.
Like,
So that's what's coming up over there. I think we've got everything covered here. Claire, you got lots of stuff coming up, do you?
I actually do not.
Oh,
You're
she
going to be
doesn't.
so proud of me. I am proudly participating in the streams going for the 2 days around the world that Purple does every year.
Oh,
So
the
that
Christmas one.
there
Yep.
is the Christmas one, and I've got from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. My time, Eastern Standard Time. That would be Christmas Day, so it's right after midnight on Christmas Eve. And I'm very happy to do that. Nobody should be alone on the holidays. I'll read, I'll do something, or for conversation, whatever. And then it's quiet until Monday when we're going to do a female serial killer from Australia whose case is coming open again because of some DNA stuff that was tossed at us. That's what we're going to do Monday. If you're joining me, Jay.
Yep. Oh, I'll
And
be there.
yeah. Yeah.
Toss
So
me the
yeah.
name at some point because I got to remember to
Yeah.
look that one up.
The first name is Catherine, and for the life of me, I'm sitting here stunned. I can't remember the last one. Please don't tell Dav on me. He's going to
That's
get
all right.
me.
So,
but I have it written down. I'll toss it to you later. Yeah. Well,
all right. I guess we should get into this.
Yes. Get started. I'm the sidekick here. This is your show.
All right.
Go. Yeah.
So we're going to be talking, like I said, today's episode is going to be about DOS and the sex cult and branding part of NXIVM. So I've set it up a little different this time because I've kind of bullet pointed this instead of just reading straight from articles. I kind of went through and bullet pointed some stuff.
Yeah.
And then
It's
Claire,
better.
as we go through, Claire may throw in some legal stuff as we go, just because it ties in really well with this. So.
Okay, so you all just heard that Jay just gave me permission to interrupt him. And Jay, you got a bot.
I know somebody want to hit that bot.
Yeah, just get that bot right away.
You can see who grabs the bot.
Oh, I could get it. It's gone.
All right, bot's gone. So, start right off here. Mark Agnifilio. Wow, that's a weird name. Agnifilio. Keith Rainier's attorney previously told CNN that Rainier created DOS as a way for women to have their own society where men could play no rules. But the prosecutors say Rainier just sat on top of the pyramid group. So, that right off the bat, I get it. You know, we talk about the men's clubs and whatnot. So to create a women's club, I'm all for that. You know, I get that. What come next is where we get the issues. So, Lauren Salzman pleaded guilty in federal court to charges of racketeering. We know that. Claire will cover that some more. But she testified she was a master and had 6 slaves of her own. And she was told that the group would teach women to be masters of their own life. While recruiting them, the masters would insist on the recruits to provide information about themselves as collateral. to encourage the recruits to keep information about Doss's secret, according to the affidavit prepared by the FBI and filed with Rainier's arrest warrant. Several women testified in court that they shared sexually explicit photos, granted access to their bank accounts, and recorded videos with damaging stories that would hurt their families and those closest to them. Some of the women even stated that those statements were false, weren't even truthful. They would make up stories. And I do have this next part. So
This
one
is
woman, go
yeah,
ahead.
go on.
No,
It's
no, go
very
ahead.
important at this part that everybody understands that although they are trying to portray that the women are willingly having sex with Keith Rainier, there's a big bone of contention if you have to give collateral to do that. And what you're explaining right here about those pictures and everything is the collateral that they repeatedly were gathering on these women, on these members, over and over again. So
Now, when we talk about pictures for collateral, we're just not talking topless photos or nothing. We're talking explicit photos. Lewd, what would be described during especially during the time of the early 2000s, very lewd photos of them in compromising situations, compromising positions, things that would, if it got out to friends and family, it would be a shock in horror. One thing, the fact, and I don't know if I've covered this earlier. If I run into those in my notes later, I'll just skip over that part. But he would sit and talk to these women while they were fully clothed with their legs spread open as he talked to them. That's how he would, when he would talk to these women, that's how he insisted that they be. And it was, yeah, it's a little creepy. I mean, it's like, how can you justify something like that?
You know, when you get down to it, and all of the things that he was doing, every single interaction he had with them was cultivated into developing a type of control over them. Every time he had a fit, all of the things that he's actually getting charged for, that he did his missteps on eventually, that he gets pulled in on, it's all because he's overreacting, because he lost even a molecule of control over these people. When you were reading, did you read about how the original 9 with Barbara Uche and them, when they went to him to argue about control, that the men had most of the control in NXIVM and that the women needed to have more power? And he had that fit. Doss is born out of that room because he got so mad that the most powerful women in his organization decided not to have anything to do with him anymore, because he wouldn't give in and give them more power or whatever. And they all walked. All 9 of them walked. And that's what this idea kind of sort of took hold. He needed more control over his inner circle, because they were complaining that the only people that had any power that were female in NXIVM were the ones that Keith was sleeping with, the inner circle. Allison Mack, and Klein and a few of the others, Saltzmans, both Saltzmans, and they were right, but it was an overreaction on his part, because he was losing control. He was losing control of some of the women in the group. He had to pay them $2.1 million to keep quiet, because he never paid them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, so. One woman, identified only as Sylvie, wrote a letter to her parents falsely confessing she was a prostitute. The contents of the letter were not true, but the threat of its release haunted her. So they would do things like that, make them write things that would just in tell stories or things like that would put them to where if it came out to their family, it would be devastating on them. Now, what I'm going to get into now is probably the biggest story. This is everything in this story kind of goes in with everything else that happened with the sex cult. This is a young lady named of Daniela, only identified by her first name in court. She had moved to Albany to help the group's mission and work for Rainier.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, just a second.
Is she one of the daughters of the three? Is she from Mexico? She came from Mexico?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is. Okay.
So, she was instructed to hack into the computers of perceived NXIVM enemies, mostly former members of the group, and was not
Mm-hmm.
paid much for work, which we got into that last week.
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking about the different sashes and the work they would do, but not get um
Mm-hmm.
compensated for their work. So, um, the Davros membership super thing came through. Davros says, "Make me a coffee, Jay, white with two. I don't know. I'm guessing 2 sugars."
Yep.
Thanks, Davros. So okay, while a minor, Daniela testified she was groomed for sexual relationship by Rainier, who she said had sex with her days after her 18th birthday. Rainier was in his 40s at the time.
Mm-hmm.
She had later found out that Rainier was also having sex with both her sisters. All 3 sisters got pregnant by Rainier at different
Mm-hmm.
times and all had abortions at his urging, Daniela said. Shortly
Mm-hmm.
after Daniela told Rainier she had feelings for another NXIVM member, she was confined to a room for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With the door open,
Yeah.
unlocked. Mm.
Her
That was
contact. No, go ahead.
Lawrence Saltzman was
Yep.
her master.
Mm-hmm.
Actually. Mm.
So her contact with Ranieri was slowly cut off as her phone, computer, and even her immigration and identification papers were taken from her. Her family didn't know that the basis of Daniela's ethical breach was that she had developed feelings for another man. Instead, Ranieri told her family about an incident years earlier in which she had stolen and promptly returned money. Ranieri encouraged her family to be strict with Daniela. After she entered a bedroom in her family's home in 2010, she could barely have any contact with the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
She had asked to leave the room multiple times over the years, but it was only Ranieri who could determine whether she could fix her ethical breach. She wrote to him every day as instructed.
Mm-hmm.
During Daniela's cross examination, the lawyer asked her why she didn't just walk out of the room. She testified that she feared her family would no longer speak to her and that she would have no place to go, since her legal documents had been taken away by her family at the urging of Rainier and the NXIVM members.
Mm-hmm.
Federal prosecutors claim the evidence that Rainier engaged in a sexual relationship with a 15-year-old girl who went on to become his first slave. She allegedly sent him images constituting in child pornography. Sorry.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The lawyers tried to have this evidence barred from trial, but the judge ruled that the images and evidence regarding the formation and structure of DOS, which makes them evidence of the subject's offenses, sex trafficking,
Mm-hmm.
forced labor, and extortion, occurred in
Right.
2015 or later.
And the legal thing that they tried to not get that evidence put in one was the date on the warrant because it was so close and the pictures were actually from before that they had the
Mm-hmm.
dates on there. But they said, I don't care. They are absolutely proof that, and it doesn't matter. That's like too technical a technicality. It still is a warrant based on, looking for all the information. Based on things that are on your computer can have multiple dates, right? But the computer
Mm-hmm.
was on the premises on the date of the warrant, period.
Yep.
Like, we don't care. Like, they really tried. I mean, that was like really. But I thought that was fascinating. Like, if that would have worked, I was like, that would have blown up every case of most of the cases of child pornography. I mean, it's pretty good that the New York lawyer knew not to let that one go. I mean, the New York judge not to let that one go because it really would have been detrimental to a lot of cases that involve pictures and documentation that are stored on computers and devices.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been crazy. But this sneaky lawyer, I don't like his lawyer at all. I really don't.
The lawyer was doing his job. So 5 pounds
Yeah.
from God the Scummer. These guys make Scientology look like the Brady Bunch.
In a way, they do because of the mind warp that's involved in some of the statements.
The we played you guys the video or the audio of Allison Mack and Keith talking about
Mm-hmm.
the branding. So I want to get into that a little bit before I move on to Gina.
Mm-hmm.
The branding part of it, when they were told the branding was supposed to, what they told the women the branding was going to be was elements, symbols of elements like earth, wind,
Mm-hmm.
fire, like
Mm-hmm.
that. Well, it turns out to be it was just an amalgamation of Allison Mack and Keith Raniere's initials.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what struck the nerve for what was her name, Claire? What was her name?
Sarah Edmonton.
Edmonton. Yep, it was
Mm-hmm.
Sarah's. When she
Mm-hmm.
found that out, because she got
Mm-hmm.
branded, and
Because
it's like, wait a minute, this you branded me with your own initials.
Right, and they were thought they were there for someone else, because we have to also remember that every woman who got into a sexual relationship with Keith Raniere was made to sign a contract that said she would only give herself to Keith Raniere for the rest of her life. Seriously, for the rest of their life.
Yeah,
Well
and
before DOS, Allison Mack was wearing a chain around her
yeah, I was
waist.
just gonna say that was one of the
Yeah, yeah, okay.
they called them belly. What are they? Belly
The
belly
belly
chains.
down belly
Belly
chains, right?
chains. Yeah,
Just documenting that she belonged only to him, regardless of whether he had anything to do with her or not. She was never to have anything to do with any other man ever. And these were some of these are written contracts, as you heard with Kathy Russell. She had to sign a contract with him, and then he ignored her. It's a little mind bending. Like this part, you can see I'm a little different. This part actually gets to me a little bit because of how manipulative and mind controlling it is, and how these strong, powerful women are being completely stripped of it on purpose, grooming for him. The reduction in weight, the reduction in power, stripping away their outside influence for their own private businesses and successes that they had before they met him. All of that's gone by the time they get to dust, Every part of it is stripped
and
away.
and one of the ways they did that is you if you were a slave to a master, you had to be available 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Right. Yeah.
If a
Mm-hmm.
master messaged you, you had, what was it, 10 seconds to respond,
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Edmonton said she had to be in contact at specific times, 6 to 7 times a day with Nancy Salzman, or
Mm-hmm.
she had terrible repercussions. Okay, and you had to pick up that phone. You had two phones with you at all time. One was just for your master.
And if that phone
Mm-hmm.
rings, it didn't matter where you were or what you were doing. You better answer that phone.
Mm-hmm. It was
Um,
you couldn't even eat a meal without telling them what it was, how many calories, and what you were going to do. They told you.
yeah.
Like if you were,
At one point, they were told they could only eat 500 calories a day.
yeah, well, look, he wanted them 90 pounds, like
Yeah,
really seriously thin women. He liked,
rail thin, just
Mhm.
walking skin and bones. I mean, if you look at Allison Mack towards the end there,
She like a
um,
bird. Yeah, yeah.
she was so thin and so frail. She looks like two different people. If you look at her before and
Mm-hmm.
after, um,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing just how much emaciation can make you look. Just
Yeah.
like I said, she looked like a completely, and she looked. It's one thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration with these people that are involved in cults like this is when they're deep into a cult, they look defeated.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at them, the best thing it reminds me is watching the Super Bowl for all your sports fanatics, and you look at the faces of the team that lost the Super
Mm-hmm.
Bowl. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of that look right
That
there
look.
is
Yeah.
what these people have all the time. Their
Mm-hmm.
will is broken. Their
Yeah.
drive to do anything is they're only there to serve the master's needs
Mm-hmm.
and Keith's needs, and you must do what we say, or otherwise I'm going to send these pictures of you sitting there with your legs spread open to your mom, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or I'm
And,
gonna, we're gonna send this recording of you saying that you're a prostitute and had a
mm-hmm.
gangbang with 20 people to your family, or to your
Mm-hmm.
job even,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
And
and it
and
was like,
it's based on that. They that collateral was repetitive too. It wasn't just one shot. Like some of them,
No,
it was
they were
based on how they acted with him and how they were responding to their masters, whether they thought anything was going on. Sarah Edmonton, because she's getting, she is one of the whistleblowers, so of course she's getting edgy and starting to ask questions. At one point, she had to give collateral every week.
yeah
Every week.
every
It,
week.
mm,
It was a new picture or a new story,
mm,
or financial information, and it was just everything they could do just to whittle and beat these people down into
mhm.
submission. We haven't even talked about the doctor.
The one that branded the
The
originals.
doctor,
Yeah.
the branded these women.
Hmm.
That I didn't look into much because I didn't want to get into the legal part. I was going to leave that because all I could
Hmm.
ever find on the doctor was all legal proceedings. But
Right.
from what I've heard before on different podcasts on NXIVM, the doctor enjoyed what he did.
He
He
did. He
enjoyed
was a
causing the
member.
pain of
Yeah.
the branding,
Hmm.
and it was like
He.
that's just sick and sadistic stuff.
Hmm. Is what we have to remember about this cult is Keith has it structured in a very unfortunately I have to use the M word of misogyny here, because the way Keith has Nexium such with the separation of the men and the women, with the men automatically coming in with Keith preaching that polyamorous things for men is perfectly okay, and women have to give themselves to that man 100% for the rest of their life, whether he wants anything to do with them or not.
Hmm.
And it was very skewed. There also power structure as far as who got to take what classes, how far you went up. Things happened differently for the men in Nexium as it was. Now, no one got a bit above Keith. Keith put a pretty good thumb on that. The men didn't get up high enough to have anything to do with the women he was interested in at the top.
Hmm.
Okay, some of the strife that happened between Keith and any male member of Nexium would directly be related to whether or not Keith is interested in that woman. For instance, Mark Vicent's now wife Bonnie, who did not want to go down to 95 pounds and never did. Okay, and
Hmm.
so there was a battle there, and Keith is trying to get her labeled as a suppressive of types, and questions start getting asked. Well, it was just skewed in that way, in such a misogynistic way that the men didn't even really ask a lot of questions in the beginning about what was happening to the women, because it was kind of kept away from them at that higher level with the first original six that were all sleeping with Keith at the time,
Hmm.
at the time. The beginning masters of Das are all his lovers, and it was a way for him to get more control. If you get them to do something wrong, they're not going to go anywhere, right, Jay? Like
Yeah, I
that,
mean, if
yeah,
you can you can get them under your thumb and get that collateral, they will do whatever it takes to make sure that you're happy that these things aren't getting out. It's
mm-hmm.
just like Scientology when they do sit down and do their EM readings,
Yeah.
and they
Mm-hmm.
just hound you and talk hours upon hours upon hours of you talking to them. They're digging into your past. They're trying to pull up these um incidences that or
Mm-hmm.
things like that they can hold over you later.
Mm-hmm.
It's a form of control. And we showed you last week that um in that presentation there that Keith had pulled a bunch of stuff from Scientology.
Yeah, he did.
And the,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
the whole collateral thing, you can
But,
directly correlate that with
mm-hmm.
Scientology, amongst other. I mean, because they're not the only the
Mm-hmm.
cult that does that. So.
But even deeper than that, I'm starting to think, and Krabby touches on it a little bit in the chat there, that there seems to be some kind of deep need on his end to take these powerful women and absolutely break and destroy them, to the point that he even doesn't want anything to do with them at the end. Look what
Mhm.
happened with Salzman, Nancy Salzman. He took his partner through the whole thing. And she was the shiny diamond. He just had to have her in there. completely successful, and by the time they get to the end, he's barely talking to her. He's keeping her at a minute. He hasn't had anything to do with her in a year. He's humiliating her in public, embarrassing her in meetings, deliberately attacking her. She looked like a shell of herself. I think an interesting thing is going to be next week is to take the before and after pictures of the women that got charged, and to
Mhm.
show you how they started and what they ended up. Just give you the visual, because it is uh, it is clear that they were broken, completely broken at the end. He took everything from them, everything.
There was one of the things that Keith did, and he uses this DOS system is when we talked about creating power. He always tried to bring in the most powerful people he could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then if like a situation with Allison Mack and Nancy Salzman, one if he could pull them in to his circle, then he would make the advances. Then he would start to have the sexual relations with them until it no longer fitted him, and he just moved on to the next one. It's the
Mm-hmm.
use and abuse
Right.
situation.
Yep.
Um, and it's just it's the what these women that were actually in this situation had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrifying to think that people not only would willingly do it
Mm-hmm.
in the case of Allison and Keith and Lauren, but allow it to be done to them in the case of the
Mm-hmm.
slaves. And
Well,
that's
yet.
where the neurolinguistic programming, the
Mm-hmm.
brainwashing,
Yeah.
that's where that stuff comes in. Because
Mm. And
if I
and
can
also,
take, no, go ahead.
look how he's enticing them with a powerful group of women. This is what they said. They used Allison
Hmm.
to say, we're going to create a powerful group of women for women. We're going to be the part of NXIVM that's going to do everything for the women. It's going to be equality. We're going to do the growth. We're going to expand to be the best that we can be. We're going to be able to make differences out there and change things. And he really used that. He crafted their desires to be recognized as powerful whole individuals on an equal member, and then he just used that against them. He let them create that group that meant nothing within the group. You know what I mean? It looked all
Hmm.
shiny and everything, but what did they actually ever get to do? um they were part of pushing the rainbow part and all of that, but they really didn't get to do as much. And Allison spent a lot of time talking to other women and getting them in. Every time it was a sales pitch about empowering women, about the
Hmm.
strengths, and look at you, we can be better, we can do better, we're going to get to our higher selves, because Keith knows what that looks like. Yeah. But then when we show you the visual of what that looks like, it's
Yeah,
not,
and
but
these women though, here's the thing with that is these slave women were told that they could, like, they became the slave to the master. At some point, they could be a master themselves and have their own slaves.
right.
I don't, and for me, I couldn't see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for a very small
Mm-hmm.
few, it might
Mm-hmm.
happen, but for the most part, these women were going to be slaves for the rest of their lives.
Well, look
If
at,
the cult
yeah.
hadn't been broken up.
Hmm. This is what Allison was so good at. Almost all of them were recruited by Allison herself. Let's be clear about that. Allison was the shiny little movie star picture. When you took a look at Allison Mack while this was going on, she looked like the cheerleader. She was the one promoting this group as empowerment for women, blah blah blah. They're all in there taking the classes, and then you're in there and you're in this part of it, which is pretty much part of the MLN part of NXIVM, and they're giving you the whole spiel about how you're going to improve yourself. And then this shiny penny that you never think would talk to you, because you look at Allison Mack like she's got it all, right? She's just like really close to Keith, and she's beautiful. She's a movie star. She's like moving up, and then she sidles up to your table and says, Shh, you look like you could really go far. There's a secret group that I know about that you might just want to, get some information on. And that was how she was able to get everybody interested in it. They didn't know what it was when they first went over there. Um, it becomes more evident as they get more control of you. Um, and they you her ability to actually just be herself and be charming. She was quite popular within that group, and then she got most of those people into the part, because remember, they're already part of NXIVM before they become part of DOS. They're already in the women empowerment part, because they're keeping that a little bit separate from the regular part of NXIVM. And she was just able to entice them just with the secrecy of it, just with the being close to her, and Keith, and getting a little in. And that's how she enticed them. I don't think they knew what it was going to be about until they were already in it.
Yeah, until they were
Yeah.
deep down into the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
My apologies, everyone. I had
You're
a
okay. Yeah.
sneezing fit.
That's okay. They just had to listen to me talk for a little
That's
bit.
all right.
Yeah. Well, but that's what Allison was done. That's why most of the charges legally, when that docket it comes down, Allison is named with Keith almost all the way through the whole thing, while other ones are only here and there. Allison is like right there through that whole thing, with him as this.
Speaking of that, I mean, we are going to cover the charges next week, but I did want to bring the charges up this week because it does kind of fit.
Mm-hmm.
What charges are we looking at for these in the DOS aspect?
In the DOS aspect, it's definitely the sex trafficking, okay? And also because of Danielle and some of this other stuff, there was labor laws, okay? And the minor charge of some that kind of crossed over because Lauren was Danielle's master, okay? That's why they were able to tie the child pornography and the labor law violations over there into the DOS charges. So they're clearly listed because of what was going on with DOS in there, and directly related to Danielle. Now, most of the times in the charges, they would list everybody as Jane Does, even though now publicly we have their names in the media and everything like that. They still, in all of the documents, are going to list them as Jane Does when they're talking about the victims. That's how New York had it like all set up to go through. But basically, it's count 3, 4, and 6 are definitely related to DOS. And then when it gets down to forced labor conspiracy and racketeering, and also because of the collateral that was held, that is part of the racketeering part, that people were doing things against their will because things were being blackmailed against them. They really were.
That's what I was
pushing
wondering.
hard on that. Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Was blackmail involved in the DOS part too? Because
Mm-hmm.
I know it was
mm-hmm.
encompassing in the racketeering part of the original
Mm-hmm.
charges. I didn't know if it
because
was
of
in the DOS part of it too.
Yeah, because of the Racketeering Act 9 in New York, they really got heavy on them for the extortion. Like, extortion was a big issue for them with this whole thing. And it was actually the defining part, which blew the defense's case away, which said that, I'm sorry, every woman that had sex with Keith because she wanted to have sex with Keith. And they said, no, you can't extort people to have sex and think that that's consent. Like that. And that was the big thing with me. I have issues with anybody in a power of authority with consent. I think it's skewed. And it's obvious if you have to give collateral to keep yourself in a sexual relationship that there is no real consent there. I mean, if you
that's not consent if you have to give something to get something.
I mean, I would even go so far to make the argument about the contracts you have to sign. Like, what kind of consent is that if you have to sign a legal agreement before? I mean, that's just not how it's supposed to be. There are big issues with consent there. He did get charged very thoroughly for everything, and he did they covered everything that they could, but they could have, I would have went even harder, because I think it's even the manipulation and everything he did. I would almost say that sometimes it's really hard to prove that anything was done against anybody's will. But when I look at these women, I don't see any will. They're broken. There's no, there's nothing really there that could be expressed as freedom or freedom and will to willingly do anything with him.
Mm-hmm.
So they just seem so broken at the end. Some people have issues why Allison Mack was charged with sex trafficking, that you could treat a victim so poorly. But I understand why the state of New York did that, why the federal government did that, because she was right there step by step. And if they did not, the case wouldn't have been as strong against Keith, because what it came down to is Allison was willing to take the rap. Jay, did you know? Did
Yeah,
you see
she
all the
said.
articles? She
Yeah,
said
she's like,
it was
I'm
all
guilty.
her. Yeah, she said,
Yeah,
I did it, because she knows what she did. She knows she talked these
yeah.
women into joining this group. She knows she was trying to get them to come. She knew about the branding. She knew it all. And she was going to take it on the chin for him.
Yeah.
And she had a turning point at the end and ended up giving them the evidence that they need. Those recordings are what sunk Keith. They
Mm-hmm.
prove he did the branding, right? He came up
Yeah.
with the plan. Okay, he
Now,
was telling her what to do.
were charges of kidnapping in there involved with Daniela?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. There are charges of kidnapping in there, but because the door was open and she willingly stayed, there was a lot of pushback on that. Well, I found that to be mentally manipulative. I mean,
Yeah, it
there
would
was a
seem that would
control thing,
be.
but legally, are you restrained if you're in a room with an open door? Like, it becomes a legal quagmire. You got to get into all the emotional
Well, I
stuff
mean,
about it, you know?
looking at that aspect though, you've got to think about kidnappers. This is where we're gonna dib in a little true crime real
Mm-hmm.
quick. This is where you look at people who kidnap these kids when they're young,
Mm-hmm.
and then after years and years in solitude, they'll do anything
Mm-hmm.
for their
Which,
kidnappers,
yeah.
including go to the grocery store by themselves, you know,
Mm-hmm.
go to school by themselves and never say a word. So it is that psychological manipulation that,
Mm-hmm.
where, hey, we're going to put you in this room. You're going to stay in this room.
Mm-hmm.
You can't leave, because if you leave, we're going to send this stuff to your parents.
Yeah. Well, they did get document servitude and everything on that, because they took her stuff away,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like. But here's the thing: she was able to walk out that door. She did after 2 years. She walked out that door, and they dropped her off at the border with no documentation or anything like that. So it was no one else. I've got to double check that for you to see if he actually got nailed for that. Um, but the charges were there in the beginning in the preliminary, and I have to see if they went forward all the way to trial with that. I'm going to double check, because I don't see it in the sentencing statement, the word kidnapping. I just did a search on the sentencing and I didn't see the word kidnapping come up. So I'm thinking that no, they didn't go forward with a formal charge, like a formal final charge on that one. But they had
Um,
plenty of other things.
I don't think you're wrong on that aspect though, Krabby. Krabby says yes, you are. If you're in the middle of some compound and there's no way to just leave, it's not like they're going to let them walk out. Add that to probably starving them. Well, yeah, I mean
Yeah. Yeah.
that's this, which is I believe Shay is Stockholm syndrome, or like
Stockholm
Belinda
syndrome.
said,
Absolutely.
trauma
Yeah. Yeah.
bonding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not
And
wrong, Krabby. It is
right.
all
And
in that same.
it is all the same, and I'm sure if those were one of the only charges they had against them, they would have went a lot further with it. But don't forget all the other stuff they had, and so that is all
Yeah.
like a lot of things you have to prove. You got to bring in psychological. She's got to go through psychoanalysis and everything like that. That they're going to have to bring evidence that she was in that state,
Mm,
because the door, it just got a little more complicated. I'm not
when,
saying it's not possible. I'm
yeah.
just saying it got more complicated to prove, because in legally that is something you have to, and it is possible to do it. They do it all the time with kidnapping cases.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that why would they put all the effort when they had slam dunks on 90% of
Yeah,
everything else? Yeah.
you got to look at that too. With so many charges coming down,
Mm-hmm.
some of them charges you're gonna have to go. Well, we're gonna throw
Mm-hmm.
this in here, hope it sticks, but we're not gonna
Yeah.
dive into this, because this charge right here, we freaking gonna nail him to the wall with this
Exactly.
one.
And
This
the
one
one
would
who,
be a nice cushion to throw with it, but
right. And they did use it to get Lawrence Saltzman's testimony. I could tell you
Mhm.
that, because who's the one that kept her in the room? Who was her master?
Yeah.
Lauren Saltzman. So
Yep.
like she only got a few, not to spill all the beans, but she's not, serving anything really long, and it's because of the testimony negotiation and getting everything together on Keith for the rest of it. So that's probably why the kidnapping thing does not exist anywhere in the sentencing, because it was negotiated away.
Now, I want to switch it up here just a second, because we are getting into more
mhm,
legal stuff, which we will definitely be covering next week.
mhm.
I want to talk about Gina Hutchinson.
Okay.
And I'm going to bring this up. This is, remember at the very beginning, and I brought one up last week. Yeah.
Mhm.
The two different murders they thought could be
Yeah.
attributed to Keith.
Mhm.
Gina Hutchinson is one. Um, so she was 33 years old when her body was found in a rural area in Woodstock, New York. Beside her was a 12 gauge pump shotgun tucked under her jacket with a muzzle at the side of her head and her hoodie. She was wearing all black. A single shotgun shell was found, but police and autopsy reports said she concluded that she killed herself by sticking the barrel inside her mouth and pulling the trigger. If it were a suspicious death, the police and the coroner would have looked for every pellet. A Winchester 20 gauge shotgun shell has 18 pellets inside the shell. The autopsy reports that they found numerous pellets in the brain and scarf she wore, and some were lodged in her hood. They did not count for all 18. Keep that in mind. They did not account for all 18 pellets. They
Mhm.
did not search the ground around her body to find all the pellets, which would help prove that she actually died at the place she was found.
Mhm.
If some of the pellets went beyond her hood, then some of them should have been recovered on the ground around her or within the vicinity. No effort was ever made to recover the pellets outside the body. If she was murdered, not finding every pellet in or around her body might have raised a question as to where she had died. There's no record that they looked for footprints, either to determine if anybody else was at the scene, or also that might have actually indicated that the body was moved or she was carried to that location.
Mm.
When a gun goes off, a cloud of fine particles covers the hands of the shooter. We know this as gunpowder residue. The forensic lab examined skin swabs and clothing with electron microscope to look for gunpowder. If she had pulled the trigger, the test would have showed it. But that test was not done either. The autopsy by Dr. Walter Dubček did not test her hands and fingers to determine if she pulled the trigger. It is rare for a woman to use guns to commit suicide. When they do, it's usually because it's a long-time gun owner. It is rare for non-gun owning women to buy a gun and use it for suicide like Gina allegedly did. Her sister says she never owned a gun. She was a pacifist and she was not a hunter. Gina stayed at Coco's Motel, which is a motel near Keith Rainier's hometown, the night before her body was found in Woodstock. Police found the motel key in her pocket. Was she planning to come back? The report is silent on whether she not left her possessions in the room. Her home was only a few miles from the hotel. She lived with an elderly aunt. Why did she stay at the motel? There was a journal found in her car that referred to dreams and mystical things and references that made to Rainier. There are notes about black poison, and she often refers to the Keith problem.
Mm.
So, here we go. According to Heidi Hutchinson, Gina's sister, Gina began an intimate relationship with Keith when she was around 15 and he was 23.
Mhm.
Heidi said he had sex with her, became her mentor, had her quit school to be tortured by him, and claimed, now this, I mentioned this before, this is the lady, claimed she was born to be his consort and achieve enlightenment as a Buddhist goddess through him.
Mm.
This is when you talked about earlier about the in one of the previous episodes about him claiming that this girl was a Buddhist goddess. This was it. He molded her life and brought into her the version of polyamory where he could have as many girls or women, but they must never be with any man but him. For most of the teens, he had complete control of her life. When she got older, she defied him and went to college. From that point on, she was in and out of his life. She did work at the ill-fated customer's byline. After a few years after Raniere started NXIVM, Gina reappeared. A few months later, she was found in gently sloping field in the woody area close to a pond, and the car was about 500 yards from where the body was.
Mm-hmm.
So her sister says, it says Heidi wrote that Gina created an exploration of meaning chart in August of 2002, 2 months before she died. I believe some of her writings were done in quasi-hypnotic twilight state. NXIVM performed abusive regression hypnotherapy on Gina and others who were deliberately put into a dissociative state where they become more suggestible. That right there is where I wanted to bring this all around to, because
Right.
we can get into the rest of this Gina Hutchinson case, but we could make a whole episode wrapped around that. Why wasn't it looked to? Why this, that, and the other? Real quick, thank you, Lissy Lou, for becoming a member. I thought you already won, but apparently you weren't. And a big shout out to Chris. Thank you, brother. He said watching Jay and Claire on the big TV. Oh, I'm sorry, drop Claire.
Yeah, I know. That's why I aided him.
But that's what I was talking about with the manipulation, the brainwashing, and you've seen it there in her own writings,
right?
And this now,
and that was back then, and he repeatedly used that on every single one of them. That's his his hypnosis and the use of language. They're purposely putting people in that state when he's talking to them. Also, it should be noted that when he had that meeting with the 9 women that didn't want to have anything to do with them, that were complaining about the power structure, he purposely told them during that meeting, he goes, "You keep pushing me. I've had 2 people killed." He said that to them. That's quoted everywhere in tons of articles and in statements during the court case that he did say that. And they do believe that one of the people he's talking about is Gina.
Yeah, and the other one was the young lady up in Anchorage.
Yes.
$2.99 Australian dollars from Heretical Super Chat, because Claire is awesome.
Oh, I almost want to take that 8 back.
And Lissy says renewed membership.
Thank you. Thank you.
There is no, what I don't understand with Gina's case is it wasn't, I mean, with Keith saying I've had 2 people killed, and then this with Gina, it just seemed like there would have been more of an investigation around that, of what actually happened, than what we've got. I mean,
well, just like with Scientology, things get buried. I mean, let us not forget how much money, all the money that the Broadmans put in, almost all of it's going to legal stuff all the time. Okay, because the 9 women that went against him before, like as he's creating DOS, those 9 women were all getting charged at the time. Broadman's like putting over money left and right because he's trying to keep them from quiet. He's put charges on them, civil suits left and right everywhere he can. So I would imagine that they put a lot of money around. It was probably right out of the Scientology handbook, with silencing, money, bribing, even, in my humble opinion. Of course, I'm not accusing of anything that he hasn't been charged for, but it's just common sense that he's probably doing it. Because you're right. Why wouldn't they? The parents, anybody come forward? It just seems like it got squashed on purpose. There's too much there.
If the rest of that article actually does talk about Heidi is pushing to get it more looked into. But I mean, she's not really. Excuse me. It's not really going anywhere.
I would think a man.
One thing. Sorry, I want to throw this in here because I forgot I wanted to add this. Okay. It was reported by 3 separate witnesses who said that they were the ones that first told him at different times about Gina's death. Each one who told him said that when they told Keith about Gina's death, he acted genuinely surprised and grief-stricken. One of them said he even had a tear in his eye. He said to another one of them, if he'd only been in more in Gina's life, he might have saved her. He said to all of them that he had not seen Gina in years, which we know is not true.
Mm-hmm.
Each time he heard the news of her death, he acts surprised and sad.
Yeah, acting.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Now, he says he had them killed. I think if he actually did it himself, there would be more there, because he is a bit of a control freak, and he, obviously, he's got his thumb on everything, and I think he would want to own it if he did it himself. I do think he made his wishes known and somebody else did it, but the fact that he just did the same thing over and over again was clearly rehearsed, and he's clearly just manipulating, and he doesn't even care because he knows he's doing it the same way, but he's like, using his other skills too to manipulate the situation.
Well,
they just never investigated because they truly believed what happened.
And that goes back to the sex cult part too. At one point, he denied it and said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I don't know what you mean, masters and slaves, and what are you talking about? This is what do you mean this is going on?" It's like, dude, we've got pictures, we've got video, we've got audio.
Exactly. But how often have we seen that happen in so many legal cases? It's just like they'll use any little thing. Krabby has a point. The law hasn't caught up. When you entice somebody to suicide, it should be considered more of a charge than it is. There are charges that you can put somebody for that, but it's just not legally caught up. Just like the stuff that happens, jurisdictions, one of them, when it comes to YouTube cases and things that happen on the internet, jurisdictions incredibly weird. It's like, where did it actually happen? How, who's in control of it? What's going on? There are lots of things that the law has not caught up to yet, as far as in the United States and or internationally. Some countries do it better. But yeah, I know
agree. when I take Chris's channel from him fully, it's gonna be a pain in the ass trying to work around them Australian laws.
I know, Chris. We gotta talk. You gotta help me. I'm scared. The bear's scared.
So next week we're really gonna be deep diving into the.
I'm gonna have fun next week. I'm
Claire's gonna have. I'm gonna sit back and just go,
hey, I'm gonna have Chris. I get Chris's channel next week. You hear that, people? Yeah, show up. It's gonna be a party. It's like, no, but don't fear, Chris. It'll be okay. I promise. I'll be good. I will.
But like I said, we're gonna touch up and wrap up and everything next week, with other criminal charges and what everybody was sentenced to. So yes, next week will be a good silver lining. I don't know. I think at this point, go ahead, Claire.
No, I was just gonna say I'm quite impressed that everybody has stayed for the whole series here.
I am.
We see the same faces all the time, and I'm hoping they got a little more out of it. Everybody covers NXIVM. It's hard to do NXIVM in a different kind of way. We tried to bring out some of the less noticeable parts of it, the things that were being just put aside a little bit, not the sensational part of it as much. But next week it's about the takedown, Edmonton and Vicente, taking down this whole thing. That's one thing we should mention while we're covering DOS before we sign off, is that Mark Vicente went to Rainier several times while DOS was being developed to say that he thought something was up between the power structure, between the way they were handling the women's part of NXIVM and the way they were handling the men's part. And that he was very unhappy with the condition that Allison Mack was in, that he thought she was underweight and under stress and things were going on. And he had quite long conversations with Allison, and that's where we get the information about the chain she's wearing. She's committed herself to Keith. She's going to do whatever he says. That this is how they formed their relationship, and he's hearing it from several women, and he's getting concerned, and he has that in the back of his mind while all this is going on, because they had such smart, intelligent people around him. That's the part that's really getting to me. Is like these people were brilliant, and it happened anyway.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with cults is you get the everyday Joe can't be a cult leader. You've got to have charisma. You've got to have that certain. What the fuck? I'm sorry. Sorry. Grumpy, you're an ass. To be a cult leader, you've got to have that charisma. You've got to have the drive. You've got to have that ability to make people believe what you believe. And not everybody can do it. So when you get that perfect combination, I guess you create people like Dave Miscavige, Keith Raniere, Marshall Applewhite. You get those cult leaders, Jim Jones.
Yep.
So
it's just too much. Yeah. It sounds so good. The McCartney the week after sounds.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
I'm very. My brother-in-law wrote a little book about that. One of those like self-published books about it. It was quite funny. About a bunch of college students that tried to figure it out. Yeah, it's cool.
So, thank you everyone for joining us today on episode 6. I know at some point it's got to be getting boring for everybody to come in and listen to us talk about the same cult week after week.
Oh man,
that's when we tried to make this. We knew this was going to be a long one coming in because there was so much stuff to cover. So we tried to do it in parts like we did to keep it interesting because I mean, honestly, we could have done this in an episode and just went here's NXIVM, but you wouldn't have got the information that you've gotten over the last 6 weeks. You wouldn't have got the reasons behind things and get a better understanding of why things happen the way they did, why we're it's going through what it did, and why the charges and what everybody got and the side effects it is. When we did Heaven's Gate, we actually went to the Heaven's Gate website and we deep dive into the website so we understood why those people killed themselves. That's what we like to do here on Cults and Conspiracies. We're not just going to tell you about this cult or this conspiracy. We're going to deep dive into it. The McCartney one for the week after next that's every once in a while you got to throw in a fun conspiracy, and that one's just funny.
Yep.
But you was in rare form today, aren't you, Ed?
He's just like
we knew it was going to be a long one to BBC 2021.
Oh yeah, there you go. We're gonna finish it out with that one, right?
Gretchen says I enjoy it. Best morning show ever.
Oh, thanks, Gretchen, and I appreciate you guys getting up. Gretchen and Shay and Pickle got up so darn early to come over here, and thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Chris we should look at why clouds magically disappear.
We should, Chris.
We've got gentlemen that could probably tell us all about it.
I missed that. I'm going to need it after this series. It's a little, NXIVM was a little hard, Chris. You got to come make me happy, and we do that when you come back in January. Please.
2 weeks. Six Pack will be back in 2 weeks. Like I said, Cults and Conspiracies, we're keep trucking along. Chris is estimating that Raelians is going to be a 6-parter. I don't know that much about the Raelians, so this will be interesting for me. I know about it, but Chris is the one that's going to be running that one. Because like I said, I don't know much about him. Chris knows quite a bit. So this one will be interesting for me because I'll be learning something new. instead of bringing my knowledge to you guys, I'll be learning some new stuff. So I am looking forward to the Raelians because I'm not in charge that time. Thank you all once again. I tried to make sure that when we talked about the topics we didn't go into too much graphic detail. I mean, I could have went into so much detail, but I didn't think it was necessary. I thought we could convey what happened without being gross and grotesque.
Right. Because, the physical parts of it that you chose not to discuss, which is wonderful, really are in direct relationship to the mind, the mental mind stuff that was the way he abused them mentally and kept them down and used all of these things to put them under control. And all of that was much more important because it's why it happened. And it's how they got to that point. And the sensationalism of what happened is already out there and everybody's heard it. And, you don't have to go far to find it if you really want to know. But I don't think you need to know the gory details of what he did to them. For that. Just the,
No. Chris says Raelians should be a good one. Claire should jump in for that. Rael claims to be the Buddhist Mataraya. That'd be interesting to hear.
And if you're inviting me, I'll be there. If
5 pounds from God the Scummer, coming soon to Cults and Conspiracies, and I'm not going to read the rest because I'm not going to dignify that. No, it says $5. 5 pounds coming soon on Cults and Conspiracy. How Jay is secretly Kyle Curtis and is stealing the channel. We know I'm not Kyle because I have been on some non-sec at the same time Kyle was, so I am actually a different person, and I've already stole the channel, so you're a little late.
I know.
And Lizzie, Lizzie says I'm smarter than that.
She's smarter than that.
Rage says he's been looking into the Raelians himself. Chris has got lots of the Raelians.
Yeah. Now there's 2 Raelians. I need to know which one you're looking into.
This is not Lord Rael, which is what I thought. When Chris first brought it up, I thought it was like, ooh, Lord Rael. He's like, no, there's another one. I'm like, oh, really? So yeah, this is one I don't know about. So yeah, that one should be interesting because I thought it was Lord Rael and it's not. So
okay, so I'll just say it's a different one. Okay.
Yeah. So so thank you everyone. I said
yep.
We had the warning ticket down. I hope we didn't cause anybody issues that we're here. If we did, we do apologize 100%. Thank you all for being here. Like I said, we tried to convey the information without getting too graphic. I hope we achieved that today. Because you can talk about things without and convey what you mean without going into graphic detail.
Right.
And we try to do that. So thank you so much. Yeah, Chris says the Raelian movement. It'll go to rael.org, and you can look into that. I don't know much more to say other than thank you all for being here. Thanks everyone in the chat. Thank you all for sticking with us every week after week.
Yep.
Next year, here on Hereticals, we're looking at pushing forward. We're coming on 100 episodes of 6-pack. I don't know how many episodes we're up to here on Cults and Conspiracies. We're into quite a few. And when I'm Cults and Conspiracies go way back to when me and Bobby Mack were having our conversations. So we've got quite a few episodes in. We'll have to look that up at some point, Chris, and try to figure out how many Cults and Conspiracy shows we've had.
I think I found the right one. It says extraterrestrials created all life on Earth. Am I in the right spot? This sounds like fun.
rael.org.
Yeah. And the first thing that pops up is this whole thing. It says,
that's the one.
There's that's what I'm greeted with. Extraterrestrials created all life on Earth.
Yeah. The Raelian movement, intelligent design for atheists. Ooh.
Okay. All right. So, I'll be there.
Just a warning for anybody that goes to the website. In the video, there are boobies.
There are boobies.
I don't want anybody to get caught unaware. Is
there
one
are.
that we try to make sure that everybody is so when you watch the little credit that rolls when you first click on it, there are boobies. So just be careful of that in case, because some people aren't into that type of thing. So I am going to save this bookmark under my conspiracies folder so I don't lose it. Done. Okay. So thank you all. Like I said, once again, thank you all for showing up.
Thank you, everyone. Mm-hmm.
Krabby says it's more likely to believe in aliens than that a flat Earth that's only 6,000 years old for real.
Mm-hmm. No,
And
this
I
is
like
true. Everybody else, the support of boobies is overwhelming in the chat. This is great. Okay. Oh.
the grumpy movement is at fappy old dude / only.
Oh God. Oh, they got it.
Chris says boobies or bobbies. Shay says boobies. Claire, Krabby's boobies are nice. Well,
Yeah.
just thought
Hey, I got nothing against them.
No.
I'm more interested in those extraterrestrials, to tell you the truth, though.
Yeah, I know. That's going to be interesting. Intellectual design for atheists. Yeah, so.
Oh boy. Oh, here we go.
I'm going to wrap this up, or we're just going to keep chatting. So thank you, everybody, for
thank
coming.
You.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. Tune in next week as we wrap this ginormous story of NXIVM up. And I want to thank everybody for showing up. And those new to the channel, those watching it later, thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you all.
And as I always say, be water, my friends.
Yep. Have a wonderful day.